There are 12,500 nuclear warheads on this planet right now, just sitting there, pointed at things, waiting patiently the way only weapons of mass destruction can. And before you say, okay, but that's not really my problem, statistically, a meaningful number of them are pointed at wherever you're watching this from right now. So, good morning. On the night of September 26, 1983, every single one of those warheads almost flew. Not because of a war, not because a president lost his temper, because a Soviet satellite had a very bad day, and one man in a bunker decided, at roughly 12:14 in the morning, not to trust it. His name was Stanislav Petrov. He saved your life. And there is an excellent chance you have never heard of him. Don't worry, we'll get to why that is. But hold on to one question while we go through this. What actually happened to Petrov after that night? Because the answer is either going to make you laugh or make you want to lie down on the floor, possibly both. To understand what Petrov walked into, you need to feel what 1983 actually was inside the Kremlin. It is March. A Soviet general sits down with his morning coffee and turns on the television. Ronald Reagan, President of the United States, leader of the free world, man with his finger on the largest nuclear arsenal ever assembled, looks into the camera and calls the Soviet Union an evil empire. Not coded language, not a diplomatic slip. Evil empire. On live television, in front of the whole world. The general puts down his coffee. He picks up the phone. Then, on September 1st, 25 days before our story, Soviet air defenses shoot down Korean Airlines Flight 007, a passenger plane. 269 people dead, including a sitting U.S. congressman. The Americans are furious. The entire planet is furious. Moscow looks at the wreckage, looks at the international community, and essentially says, the plane was probably spying. The relationship between the two superpowers is, to use the technical term, absolutely cooked. And inside Soviet intelligence, there is a classified operation called Ryan, whose entire purpose is to scan for signs that America is preparing a nuclear first strike. Not paranoia, math. The Americans have been outspending the Soviets on defense for years, and someone ran the numbers and didn't like what came out. Both sides are terrified of each other, and two terrified countries with 12,500 nuclear warheads between them are, I cannot stress this enough, a profoundly concerning combination. Into this situation, enter the Soviet early warning system, OKO, which means eye in Russian. Because when you're building a satellite network to detect nuclear launches, subtlety is apparently not a design priority. The eye's job, stare at American missile silos around the clock, and the moment anything launched, scream. Think of it as the world's most consequential smoke detector. Except instead of a sprinkler activating, the response was a nuclear counterstrike capable of ending human civilization. So, higher stakes than a kitchen fire, marginally. The system fed into a doctrine called launch on warning. And here I need you to follow the logic of the people who built it, because they were not stupid. They were, within their own framework, completely rational. The thinking. American missiles take roughly 12 minutes to arrive after launch. If the Soviet Union waits to confirm they're real, those 12 minutes are wasted. By the time the warheads land, Soviet launch capacity is gone. The side that shoots second in a nuclear exchange doesn't get to shoot at all. So the generals built a machine designed to fire before impact. See the launch, verify, respond, all inside 12 minutes. No room for doubt, because doubt in this framework was how you died. It sounds insane. By any normal human standard, it is absolutely insane. But within the specific nightmare logic of mutually assured destruction, it was the only move on the board. The generals who built this weren't monsters. They were chess players who had convinced themselves the board was real, and had built a machine to play the game faster than any human could think. And between those generals and the button, they placed one man. Stanislav Petrov was a lieutenant colonel. He was also, crucially, an engineer by training, not a military man by instinct or temperament. He had spent years working on the OKO system itself, which meant he understood its design, its margins of error, and its very specific and well-documented habit of occasionally reporting things that were not there. He had told his superiors about this several times in writing. His superiors had thanked him for his diligence and filed the report somewhere quiet, as superiors do when an engineer starts raising inconvenient questions about the expensive system they just finished building. Petrov was 44. He lived with his wife Raisa in a modest apartment outside Moscow. He was not a man who expected to be at the center of anything. He went to work. He did his job. He went home. On September 26th, he sat down at his post at midnight. Routine shift. Nothing scheduled. The kind of night where you drink bad coffee and wait for morning to rescue you. At 12:14 a.m., the alarm went off. Not a warning light. Not a soft chime. The kind of alarm that fills a room completely. The kind that makes you forget for a second what your own name is. Petrov looked up at the main display. The room behind him went silent. 30 men and women who had been doing ordinary late-night shift things, checking readings, filling out logs, staring at nothing, suddenly were all staring at the same place. On the screen, in letters that left no room for ambiguity, launch. 1 American Minuteman missile. Confirmed by satellite. Inbound. Petrov had a phone in each hand, one connected to his superiors, one to the duty officer. Protocol was not complicated. Confirmed launch goes up the chain immediately. The generals make the call. The window is 12 minutes. He put both phones down. 1 missile, he thought, and this reasoning is documented in his own interviews years later, makes no sense. If America is starting a nuclear war, they are not starting it with 1 missile. They would launch everything simultaneously to ensure nothing survives to shoot back. 1 missile is not a first strike. 1 missile is a malfunction, or a test, or a system doing exactly what he had been complaining about for years. The logic was almost offensively simple. It was also the only thing standing between 2 nuclear arsenals and the rest of human history. Then the screen updated. 2nd missile. Confirmed. 3rd. 4th. 5th. The display upgraded to its highest possible alert level. The word changed. Missile attack. Behind Petrov, someone stood up. Then, everyone stood up. A duty officer near the back of the room later recalled that the sound of the alarm seemed to get louder the longer it ran. Or maybe that was just the silence underneath it. One of his staff members caught Petrov's eye and held it, the way people look at each other when they don't know what else to do. Petrov had roughly 3 minutes. The missiles, if real, were already a quarter of the way across the planet. Here is what he was holding on to. The ground radar had not confirmed anything, and a satellite system with known bugs, producing a reading that no ground-based equipment could corroborate, was, in his engineering judgment, more likely to be broken than correct. He was 50% sure. His own words, years later. A coin flip. He picked up the phone to his superiors. "I am reporting a system malfunction," he said. "Not a launch." He was right. The investigation took weeks. The cause, when they finally identified it, a rare atmospheric alignment. Sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds over North Dakota at an angle the system had never been calibrated for, had produced an infrared signature that the OCO satellites read as missile exhaust plumes. The most sophisticated early warning network the Soviet Union had ever built. Defeated by clouds. Completely ordinary clouds. Over North Dakota. Petrov went home that morning. Raisa was awake when he came in. She asked how the shift was. He said it was fine. He sat down at the kitchen table and looked at his hands for a long time. The hands that had held 2 phones and put them both down, and said nothing else. She found out what had happened years later, the same way the rest of the world did. He never found the words that night. Maybe because there weren't any. What do you say to someone when the sentence is, "I think I just decided that the world isn't ending, and I'm about 80% sure I was right"? And the Soviet military, after a thorough review of the incident, arrived at the appropriate institutional response. They gave him a formal reprimand, not a medal. A reprimand because in the chaos of those 12 minutes, Petrov had written his observations in note form rather than using the correct incident reporting columns in his duty log. He saved civilization. He got written up for bad paperwork, which is genuinely one of the most Soviet outcomes imaginable. And also, if you sit with it for a moment, one of the most human ones. He was reassigned to a less sensitive post. He retired early. Raisa got cancer. She died. He moved into a small apartment in Fryazevo, east of Moscow, and lived on a pension that was, by all accounts, modest at best. The incident was classified. For 15 years, the world went about its business completely unaware it had almost not existed. Take a breath. Because here's the thing. This story is not really about 1983. It's not really about the Soviet Union or nuclear doctrine or Cold War paranoia. It's about something much closer to where you're sitting right now. We do this constantly. We build systems, at work, in institutions, in relationships, that reward speed and certainty and penalize the person who slows down and says, "Wait, something feels wrong here." We call that person difficult. We reassign them. We file their report somewhere quiet. And then, on the rare occasion when they turn out to be right, we give them a reprimand for how they filled out the form. Petrov didn't save the world because he was brave. He saved it because he was a bad soldier. Too slow, too skeptical, too willing to sit inside uncertainty rather than resolve it by following the procedure. The most dangerous thing isn't the alarm. It's the system that punishes you for questioning it. In 1998, a defected Soviet intelligence officer named Oleg Gordievsky revealed the story publicly for the first time. The world learned Petrov's name. He was flown to the United Nations. He received the World Citizen Award in 2004, the Dresden Peace Prize in 2013. A documentary was made. People shook his hand in large rooms and told him he had saved humanity. He was, by every account, genuinely uncomfortable with all of it. Asked in one interview how it felt to be called the man who saved the world, he said, his own words documented, "I was just doing my job." He died on May 19, 2017, in his apartment in Fryazevo. The news reached the Western press approximately 3 months later, when a German journalist noticed that nobody had reported it. 12,500 warheads. Still there, still pointed. And somewhere, right now, in some organization you've never heard of, there is a person filing a report that nobody will read, about a problem nobody wants to deal with, in the wrong format. I wonder what's in it.